Hello and welcome to Parenting Stuff I Wish I Knew Sooner and Want You to Know Now. I'm your host, Erica Desper, founder of the Center for Confident Parenting and a mom who seems to learn everything I need to know just the hardest way possible. On a mission to get information and resources to other parents earlier and more easily in their journey. My guest today I'm super excited about is Corina Jenkins. She's a mom to 2 young children and an advocate for adolescent and teen mental health. Corina, thank you for joining me.
Erica, honestly, and I mentioned this to you before, but like I'm gonna try to keep my tears back. I'm a very emotional person. It's a great thing that I work in mental health, right? But I just want to, acknowledge that this is really wonderful that you're doing this. How many times do we have conversations with our friends and our colleagues and our other mom friends about like, oh gosh, I wish I knew that. But you bring together this tribe and that collective knowledge and that collective support is really helpful. So I'm really grateful that you're doing this and I love it. So
Thank you
thank
so much. You're very welcome. And I'm grateful to have you be a part of it. I feel like we're both fangirls of each other.
Yes, very much so.
Sing each other's praises, but that's why I'm super excited to have you. And we were, I think you and I could talk about anything. We were dishing makeup and all sorts of stuff before we got started, but we'll try to stay on the task at hand.
Yes.
But first things first, for anyone who does not know you yet, which would be kind of surprising because I always say you're like as connected as the mafia, but in the area of
I love that.
teens and families and the main line and mental health. So just tell everybody, like, who are you? Tell us about your family. Tell us about your background so we can get to know you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for asking that. And, I feel very grateful that I, am connected in this community, and it didn't come easily for sure. I'm not from here. I'm actually from California. I was born in the Bay Area, but I kind of grew up bi-coastally. My parents are divorced. They divorced when I was younger. So I grew up in California, New Jersey, and Connecticut. My husband's from New Jersey. We went back to California. That's where my daughter was born. But like fast forward to the chapter that we are in now. And we moved to Pennsylvania because of his family. And my mom lives in New Jersey now. So it's as close as I get to, New Jersey. I love New Jersey. I went to college in New Jersey. I know. My girlfriends, my sorority sisters will kill me for that. But I wanted something, a little bit slower paced. I wanted this community that is open. And I actually fell in love with my brother and sister-in-law's neighborhood for the one time that I was there. And so I really they had a New Year's party and they opened up their door and all the neighbors came in with their kids. And at that point, my husband and I weren't married and nor did we have kids at the time. And I was like, I want this. This is great. Like, can we just open up our door and just have our neighbors come by and the kids run around and like have that? And I know that sounds very simple to ask, but it is very hard to find that around the country. Honestly, it's not, people can be very friendly. They can be very open, but to have that sense of community is rare. So when my daughter was 6 months old, I told my husband, we were living in Garden Grove at the time in California. And I was like, remember that one time we went to go visit your brother and sister? We should move to that neighborhood. And he was like, that was the only time you were in Pennsylvania, Corina. Like, why are you talking about this? And I was like, I need family. So I need community, right? And that is really, you know me, like I live for connections. I live for community. And I will tell you, we built a house in Boyertown and we host every New Year's. We had New Year's.
You're connected on Facebook and I'm like, wow, her neighborhood is tight. There are 1 million children in this photo.
There is. And they run around my house and people bring appetizers and my heart is just so full. So
you could see it. You could see it. You wanted it. You got it. That's amazing. And I've grown up here. I mean, I moved around a bit, but I've always come back. So I don't really know that this is maybe unique, to this area. But that's awesome. And we're glad you're here.
Thanks. And we built our roots. I always say, like, I'm not moving anywhere. They're going to bury me in the backyard because we built this house. And I was like, I don't want to go anywhere else.
Right? Wonderful. And how old are your girls?
Yeah. So I have two daughters. Our oldest is 7, going to be turning 8 next month. She keeps on reminding me this because she's getting her ears pierced.
Oh,
And then I have a 4-year-old. Yes, and my 4-year-old is, yeah, I mean, she's a teenager. I just don't know even
already.
how to explain it. Yeah. So, I mean, they're just so wonderful. And I mean, everything I do is because of them. So it is really, really wonderful to like see the world through their eyes and, again, build this community for them and be a part of it. So they're
Yeah.
fun. They are so fun. And I love that especially with the flexibility of my work, I'm able to do a lot of things with them. And it is very much a part of my work. So yeah, I have two daughters and a New Jersey husband that is now,
We'll
and
forgive him for that.
yeah, no, he's great. He puts up with me. So, yeah, no, it's been a wonderful journey, and
Wonderful. And what
it's
about
fun.
your professional background?
Yeah,
I know it's extensive.
yeah. So, I made this joke before that I've always been in some kind of like outreach or community role. If that wasn't in the title, I made it that way. Again, for that sense of community. But I went to school for marketing and communications. So I guess that's what I'm doing. I'm communicating all the time. But how I got into the field of mental health is really that I think that it is so needed, and I feel like it's constantly been a thread throughout my work. I worked for schools for a long time, and then I always found myself in some way supporting or helping build those services. Regardless, my master's degree isn't in mental health; it's in education, but it just kept on pulling me there. So when I received the opportunity to join the Embark team, it was just such a natural step, and I feel like this is now home. And I just feel very grateful to help families, because our family, well, I know we'll probably talk about this a little bit, but my brother struggles with his mental health, so I know how important it is to have quality services and have that support because there's such a there. We also spoke about this before, but you don't really know where to go for help. It's like this happens, and then what's the next step? There's no,
Mhm.
especially in the mental health world. So sometimes a neighbor will know something, sometimes your pediatrician will know something, but you're grasping at straws a lot of times. And um it's nice to be able to bring that together for because that happened for our family. And I was so very grateful. And it's an ongoing process. It's not, he
Sure.
will always have this,
Right.
but I really value those people that go above and beyond. So I'm grateful to be one of those people to do that for families.
Yeah. And for anyone who isn't familiar with Embark, do you want to just tell us briefly what they
Yeah.
offer?
Yeah. So I knew Embark as I was I was a school that referred a lot of our kiddos to them. And Embark is a teen mental health. So partial hospitalization. I know that sounds like a scary word. It's not a hospital. It's the day program for kids that struggle, and then the intensive outpatient, which is in the evening. So there's a clinic in Berwyn, and I was very familiar with that clinic, and I would go there just honestly to hang out and to see the therapist and see our kiddos. And it's like a home.
Mhm.
And so there is other clinics all around the country. There's also a full continuum of care that I was learning about. So there's short-term residential programs and boarding schools and everything like that. So when families come to me or even friends ask me, you know, I'm struggling with this issue or this situation. What should I do? I can provide them with resources from Embark throughout the country, but I also am very well connected to all the other programs around the country. So
Right.
there's not one answer, but I can vet those answers for them so they're not overwhelmed
Yeah.
with everything.
And I can
Um,
attest to that because I've emailed you in a moment of weak panic. Said like, what? Where can
yeah,
we go?
no, that's and honestly, I'm grateful for that. Like, I'm grateful that I'd be like, "Oh, I've been to this program," or "I know this
Hmm.
person. I can connect to you." Because, like you say, you're in this moment, right? You're struggling, and you want to know that where you're going is of quality, and those people are going to care, and and that person can attest to them, right? So, yeah, I go specifically to all the programs. I refer to them, they refer to us. And I I never refer a program that I don't believe in. So
Mhm.
all those places I do. And
Right.
and of course I referred to Embark back when I was a referral partner. So that's why I'm here.
Sure. Well, and what I love about you and, some others that I work with is we all want to get people to the right place, which isn't the right
Right.
place for us, um,
Right.
where we would want them to go, or, just because we want the funds to go there or whatever. It's like, where's the right fit for you, your
Yeah.
situation, your needs. Um, so I super appreciate that. So was it your education background? Was it watching your brother go through the struggle with mental health? Like, what is it about teen, adolescent mental health and advocating for and supporting families in that area that makes you feel so passionate about this?
Yeah. It's I I feel like I've always been pulled to this. Even back so every decision I feel like was a group decision of other people for me. And I was like, "Oh, yeah, that is a good." It's like when I was a communication major, I was originally a business major. I was going to go into teaching, and they were like, "But you're really good at this part. You're really good at, this other marketing." I got an internship and everything. And then I was like, "Okay." And then, I went into education, and I was able to travel the world and work for these universities. And then people advocated for me to do these other roles. And then I remember I applied for this registrar position, and they're like, "No, you need to be in admissions." And I was like, "Oh, okay, I guess I'm in admissions." And then I was in admissions. They're like, "No, you really need to do more outreach. You're really great at that." I'm like, "Guess I'll do more outreach." Then I then I was like, I was working for a university, then I started working for like a elementary school. And they're like, "You really should, there's this new, you advocate all the time for children with learning differences. You really should work for this school that supports kids that learn differently." And I was like, yeah, maybe I should, you know? And then I was working for that school,
You're
and
very
I was always
impressionable, Karina.
I was like always referring to, Embark and supporting kids with their mental health and helping with them with these journeys. And people are like, "You're naturally already doing this. Why don't you do it full time?" And I'm like, "Yeah, maybe I should do that." So it's
Right?
all
Oh my
just this
goodness.
natural transition where it's I've been pulled because of the strengths that I've grown, like I've developed more skills or more understandings about this. And now I feel like I received a master's degree in mental health via the osmosis of the amazing people that I get to work with. And I've been around them for so many years. So naturally, I feel like I've been pulled to this. I feel like very much like it's a calling for me, if that makes any sense. I feel
Hmm.
like everybody was calling me step by step to come over here.
Yep.
And that's why I feel so authentically passionate about this.
Yeah.
I feel like I feel very much like this is my purpose.
Yeah. Well, that's beautiful. I'm glad your calling found you. I'm glad we found you. I didn't prep you for this question, so forgive me, but like I think we can all agree that kids are not okay
Mhm,
right now,
mhm,
specifically since the pandemic, and even though that's technically
mhm.
behind us, there's a lot of residual stuff. So what are you seeing? Why are kids not
Yeah,
okay? What are the kinds of things that they're struggling with? What's making it
yeah.
so hard? I think education's a big piece of it, just based on my personal
Mhm.
experience. But what do you think?
Um, Again, I'm not a clinical professional, but what I've seen on the outside and what I've seen with our families is that these kiddos, because they were home, they spent a lot of time internalizing things.
Mm,
Um, a lot of time on their devices, a lot of time alone, just with their own thoughts. Sometimes, I would say prior to the pandemic, maybe if a child was having an issue with somebody, maybe they would work it out in person, right? Or the next day at school, that would have to be faced with adults around as well, right?
mhm.
Now those issues are really weighing on them 24 hours a day because of their devices, because of these things, because they maybe aren't going to the right people for advice. They're going on TikTok and diagnosing themselves, or really ruminating on certain things, and not um, conflict resolution has been a big challenge. And whereas a little issue may have been solved because they were in school and they could talk to their counselor, or their teacher would recognize it, or they would have eyeballs on them. It becomes a larger issue. And they internalize it, and now they're depressed, and now they have the social anxiety, or this issue is so much larger. And I feel like that's also with adults as well. I've noticed that too. It's so easy to stay at home now and not actually build relationships outside of that world. It's very easy. And I've seen that with some friendships and some people that, it's their mental health had really taken a toll on them as well, because they didn't have that connection, that in-person connection. And that's really what we need at a visceral level. Is this can't, just texting somebody or calling somebody on the phone isn't the same as having lunch with them or seeing them in person.
Yeah. And that's for us as adults with like fully formed frontal. I'm no clinician either, but I can throw around the word frontal lobe.
Right.
These are kids that they're still developing in their brain, and some things are still, impulses versus like logical thought. So it's and humans.
They hurt in humans. But I do feel, the silver lining, although, some things need to break in order to come together, right? Some things need to, and it's not that we were, everybody said, oh, we were doing well before. And it's like, no, hold on a second. This brought a lot to the forefront that we weren't paying attention to, a lot of issues that we've all been struggling with. So I've seen some great movement around mental health and the acceptance of mental health, because there is such a crisis.
Right.
So the silver lining to it, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So thank you for what you do. Let's shift back to the mom side of it.
Yeah.
This is where you might cry. So get your tissues.
I know.
Oh, you're going already. On your own mom journey with your two girls, what is the biggest joy that you would point to right now? Like, what are you just loving about it? Or maybe it's more than one. I'll let you slide on that.
No, it really, it's such an honor to be their mom. Like, every day I look at them and I'm like, I made you. Like, I'm an adult. Like, I take care of you. Like, I get to do that. Like, and I'm in awe of them. There's these moments where I'm like, you look at their face and you go back to that face when they were a baby, right? Or when they were just a year old, and you're like, oh my gosh, this time is flying. And like, you just try to soak it in. So what brings me joy is having fun with them. And that is also one of my biggest challenges, right? Is that sometimes I don't let myself be in the moment. I really struggle with my ADHD with my children, because I'm like, oh, I got to do this. And it's really sometimes very much a challenge to get back into my body and to be there in that moment with them, because they are in their body right now. They are present. At least for their ages right now.
Right.
Let's wait till they become teenagers and they're like, having, some existential crises. But right now they're present. And so the joy for me is to live in the present with them. And, they just have fun. I mean, even this past weekend, the snow, my daughter, my oldest, they both are actually. They love just cuddling with mom. And it's so easy. Just like, let's get on the couch and cuddle. And, but I'm like, you know what? Let's challenge ourselves. Let's go outside in the snow. It's beautiful out. And, it's,
I don't know. It was pretty freezing yesterday.
It was.
We told ourselves it was beautiful to get the time in, but it was pretty frigid.
I know. It's just, and I know I'm trying to create more of those shared memories with them. So allowing my space for joy to experience those things with them.
I love that so much.
Which is also my biggest challenge.
Right. Which we'll definitely come back to that. And I do want to talk about like work-life balance and all of that. But just to speak to what you just said, I'm not a fan, and I've said this before, so forgive me for repeating myself, of parents being told or having to feel like, oh, savor every minute. It goes so fast. It's so short. that's not realistic. I have hated a lot of the minutes and seconds and weeks and months
Mhm.
and years. And yet I took my son sledding yesterday as well. He's turning 14 in March. If you're on the East Coast, you know that we have not had sleddable snow in at least 2 years.
Yeah. Mhm.
I had even bought him a new sled and it's just been sitting in our garage for years. And I'm like, oh my God, he's so big and he's so old. Like, what if he doesn't get to sled again? And of course, I built this into this
Yeah.
huge thing in my mind of like, I didn't even know the last time we went sledding was the last
Mhm.
time we were going to go sledding, right? I was like torturing myself. And then all the opportunities we have over the weekend to go, I was scheduled to work. So not only was he missing time
Mhm.
with me he would have normally had, because working on the weekend is a little unusual for me, um, but it was like prime sledding time. So we did manage to go. That was the good news. We had like an hour of daylight left on
That's all you
Sunday.
need. Just an hour.
None
That's
of us
it.
needed to be there very long. I don't handle the cold very well. But I put this like intense pressure on myself. And,
Mhm.
I've been known to do this. I'm on a therapy journey of like, if this sledding doesn't happen this time, whatever
Right.
I was saying to myself, the world is over. The sky will fall. I'm the world's worst
Yeah.
mother. He'll never forgive me. I'm not creating these, shared memories. So that was like my first almost
Right.
emotional breakdown. And then we got there and I was so pleased and I, breathed a sigh of relief and the sun was shining. It was very beautiful, like you said, albeit frigid. And I looked at this man. He is man sized. I am not even 5 feet tall. You've seen me in person. He is now several inches ahead of me and not even 14 yet. And I'm looking at him in these boots with these jeans on this sled that when I bought it, it looked gigantic. And now it looks like a thimble in his hand. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like it really does go. Nothing about it went fast in each moment. Nothing about it was easy. And yet here I am like, oh my gosh, that was a blink of an eye. And I can't believe that we are where we are. So that was a very long tangent, but I totally get what you're saying. And no, you don't have to enjoy every minute, but when you can create those moments that are enjoyable, um, yeah, just soak them up. They're so, so important because there will be a time when it's fewer and farther between, or your kid just doesn't want to.
Right.
uh,
Right.
and I'm waiting for that day to come. He still does enjoy spending time with us, but it probably won't be very long. So along those lines, we talked about your
Yeah.
biggest joy. You touched on challenges, but what do you think is your current biggest challenge in mothering?
Erica, you said it. It's that mom guilt. It's crippling.
It is.
Crippling. Oh my gosh. And you're right. The smallest things can feel like, oh my, I'm failing them, right? And
Mhm.
that is my challenge. I think about it, with the sledding thing or birthdays or this. I'm like, if I don't do all of it, they're gonna
Oh,
look back at their and talk about me in therapy, right? Like I
mhm.
just, and I I working in mental health and working with teens and kids, I'm like, the other challenge is that it's like I know better, right? I know how to be the perfect mom. That does not exist, right? That
Right.
does not exist. And so every time, but in my head, I'm like, I know better. Why did I fall into my
Put that on
frustration
myself.
there?
Mhm.
Why did I and it was just and that double guilt now. Like I'm like, and now I'm dealing with it in my stomach and I'm not present and I'm like, everything is falling apart. And my
Mhm.
husband comes home and he's like, are you okay? Like, is everything okay? Because like working on the week, I also worked on the weekends because I took some time off on Friday so that I could go do some fun
Yep.
snow stuff. So I was
This
like
week was
following
so
up on
crazy.
it was and the MLK day and having that day
Mhm.
off and everything. So it the mom guilt is such a challenge and I have to keep on, having that grace with myself with that same, but with also like help allowing myself to rise above it too,
Mhm.
because it is easy to fall into what's easy or and I allow myself to do that. But there's times that I'm like, you know what, let's go sledding right now. Like
Right.
I know it's gonna be a pain in
The
the butt.
couch
I'm
will
gonna be
be waiting for us
sweating.
later.
Right. Like I don't want to put all this like snow stuff on you and you're
Oh,
complaining and you don't want
I
to do
hate that
this and
production.
and I'm like, it's all of that. But you can even
Mhm.
say that like to going to the beach, right?
Yep.
I don't want to do
Also a
like
production.
also
I'm not
another production, right?
I'm not a
Going
fan
to the
of
store.
productions.
Oh no, my daughters, I'll tell you, I don't go into stores with them. And we went to King of Prussia Mall for like the
Oh,
first time, and I forget for
well, that's
what.
a rough one to start with.
Oh yeah. But they were in such amazement of this mall. They had never been in a mall with me. They're like, is this a castle? But
It's a
because it is such a
store
production,
castle.
I know
Yes.
it is such a production. So I guess, I'm with you, the mom guilt. And I know so many of our, the working moms and also the non-working moms
Yeah.
that struggle with this, right? It is, um, it takes us out of being present,
Mhm.
and it takes us into our head when we really need to be in our body. So it's like I try to let it go as much as possible, but it is
Yeah.
impossible. Try.
Yeah, I am a perfectionist working toward being an imperfectionist. It's not easy. I don't like it. It feels very uncomfortable. Um, but I've certainly learned like the to-do list will always be there. You
Yeah.
can't put your own needs at the end of it because you never get to the end. So you got to move those up. And
Yep.
sometimes you have to just stop one thing to go, go do something else. And I'm also a big fan of like that saying, and I'm sure I'll mess it up of, there's no perfect way to parent, but no way to be a perfect parent, a million ways to be a good one. Um, that's I'm like a fan of good enough right now. And
Right.
I started with cleaning my house. That was how I practiced this. Like I used to do like the deep clean that would like take hours and hours and hours. And then I was like, you know what, today I'm just going to leave it better than I found it. That's going to
Mm-hmm.
be good enough. It's easier said than done. But I think that helps a little with the guilt if you can let yourself do that. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, to speak to the guilt again, like if I'm working, I'm guilty that I'm not focused on my son. And if
Mm-hmm.
I'm focused on my son, I'm guilty that, there's emails waiting to get
Yep.
answers. And I just think it helps to know that we all experience that on some level. Like you said, whether you have a job outside the home or your job is the home, whatever, there's going to be some sort of categories where you're feeling constantly pulled between the two and
Mm-hmm.
don't feel like you are giving your all to either of them. So that
Yeah.
brings up the topic of work-life balance. Is that a thing for you? And if it is, how do you make that happen?
Role in my previous role, I actually did a lot of training. So I would take newbies and train them, and I think that was one of their biggest things. Their questions to me was, how do you create a work-life balance? And I think the biggest thing is boundaries,
Hmm.
right? And boundaries on both ends, boundaries for my family, boundaries for my work, because work can be never ending on both ends. So you have to figure out what the limit is and what that is for you, and creating a schedule and not going back, not working more than that, not like, there's always more that you can do. So unfortunately, I mean, I did work this weekend, right? But I also, because I wanted to spend
Right.
more time with my daughters, right? So, um, I would say boundaries is a big one. Just creating the boundaries, creating a schedule for yourself where you also schedule time for yourself. I've done that this
Mm.
year. Um, and I don't feel bad about it. My husband's like accepted that. Like, these are the times that I'm doing this stuff for myself.
Mhm.
I'm not around.
Right.
Like that's
Figure it out.
yep. And then the same thing goes, with my kiddos. I'm like, if I'm doing this, like, I'm not here.
Yeah.
So let's, and the same thing with work. I I've told myself, like, sometimes I can work till 7, but like there is no productivity after 7 o'clock. Like, that's it. Like, nothing that comes out of my brain or my mouth is anything productive. I've given up at that point. So there's certain things,
Yeah.
the boundaries for sure, and
And
schedule.
boundaries are really hard for some, more so than
Mm-hmm.
others. I know that's been part of my therapy journey too. So if you're hearing this and you're like, what is she talking about? Um, I think if you're really, really early on in the journey of boundaries, the first step is to even understand what they are. Like the fact that
Yep.
you can have time in your day where you aren't accessible to either your family or your work
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. Um, and yes, notifications might be pouring in, but you're just not going to check them or not going to
Mm-hmm.
respond to them. And then just giving yourself permission to set those
Mm-hmm.
up, whether it's a physical boundary like a block on your schedule, or even a personal boundary like I'm saying no, not because I can't
Mm-hmm.
attend this thing, but because it just doesn't serve me. I just don't want to.
Right.
That was really, really hard for me. It's still hard, um, but we're better for it when we're able to do that. So for sure.
That's a great point. And I think it's not only us that are better for it, but the people around us,
Yeah.
right? When we set healthy boundaries for ourselves, I think it's really hard to do it, especially with our loved ones. But then they start
Mhm.
doing things for themselves. Like it's
Right.
crazy when you're
Yeah.
not around and they're like, oh my gosh, I can do this on my own. Yeah, you can. We had this whole thing this
Mhm.
weekend where the girls made dinner because we watched like The Princess and the Pauper or
Wait,
something.
how old are they?
And
4 and 8?
yeah,
Oh,
it was
this is awesome.
Google's like, yeah, and like salad. But we watched The Princess and the Pauper and Pauper.
Mhm. Popper? Yeah.
Pauper, yeah. And we were taught, and they're like, why are they being so mean to her? And
Mm.
they're like the servant, right? And I'm like, well,
Mhm.
all right, this word is sticking with them.
Right.
So like my daughter was like, Mom, can you get me this? I'm like, listen,
Mm.
mommy's not your servant, right? Mommy's your mommy. So
Right.
what can you do for yourself? And that really,
Ooh.
oh yeah, it worked.
What a
So
good
now when
teaching
they,
moment.
oh yeah, I was like, mommy's not your servant, right? So help, what can you do to create for yourself? What can you do
Mhm.
for yourself? So, and that's, I think a lot of moms fall into that role because it's just easier to do it yourself, right? It's just
Sure.
easier.
And faster.
It's easier to make, and
And
faster
less messy.
and less messy and less like the back and forth. But I'm like, you have to let them fail.
Mhm.
And that's a big challenge for myself
Yeah.
is like for everybody, I'm not their servant.
Yep.
I'm not anybody's servant. So,
Yeah.
I have to have that boundary for myself.
Yeah. I think that's really, really excellent. So you mentioned carving out time for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
What does Karina do to refill her cup? And
Oh
how do
yeah.
you make the time?
Yeah, so really the schedule.
You
There's
just build it
times,
in
yeah,
and don't
so
wiggle.
I'll have
Just
and don't wiggle. Yeah. There's days, so I've set up my week where there's days that I work later, but
mhm.
because in the morning I either have gone to work out
Mm.
or I've done something for myself.
Mhm.
I set time, and this is I think is really important because I've had this conversation with a lot of my girlfriends. Set time to go see the doctor.
Mm.
How many of
That is
us,
that
when was
is
the last
self-care
time right. When was the last time you've done a wellness check, right? When was the last
for
time,
yourself.
like, for yourself, scheduled your cleanings? Like, we do this all for our kids. We don't do this
Mhm.
for ourselves. So, like, I have mornings that those are just doctor visits or whatever,
Right.
right? If it's not a doctor visit, then it's going to the gym. But then I also, to take away, alleviate the guilt, right? Those are days that I'm maybe working a little bit later.
Mhm.
And then there's also that balance too of my evenings where I'm just completely focused on my girls and
Mhm.
that's it. Like, so, what I do to fill my own cup is again, back to the schedule for myself. I love to spin,
Oh
like
yeah.
yep. I love it in a dark room so that when they have like a really emotional song, I'm crying in the darkness and nobody can see me. So that is a big thing for me. I love it. And I'm just like on the bike sweating and crying and then nobody knows because I'm just like
Oh
it's
my
sweating.
goodness. Everyone just
Yeah.
thinks it's sweat.
I was just working out so hard. It's very therapeutic for me. Honestly, I don't even go do it for like to like lose weight or anything. I do it because it's a
It's like
great
a
way to
therapy
clear my
session.
mind.
Yeah.
So I make time for my friends and, having dinners with them and lunches. And I schedule those just like I schedule play dates with my girls' friends. So I try to make sure that I'm like, oh, how many things am I doing for myself and how many things am I doing for
Mm.
my kids? And that for me, I
Like
know that
literally
sounds pretty,
trying to balance it.
yeah, but then I
Mhm.
know in my head that I'm taking care of myself. And sometimes that measuring helps me feel that I am taking care of myself. I'm like, okay, I've done this for myself and I have to remind myself of that. Um, because a lot of us need to work on our self-worth and,
Mm.
like going back to like the servant, right? Or being that for
Mhm.
everybody. But we are amazing human beings and everybody around us knows this, but sometimes it's really hard to believe that yourself.
Mhm.
So we have to check in with ourselves and tell ourselves that, like, I'm doing a great job. Like,
And
everybody
kids
tells
are
me I'm doing a great job.
right? You are doing a
Right.
great job. But what an awesome role model for your girls. Like I always say to parents, especially moms, if it's not selfish to put yourself first, but if you're really struggling with that and you're just not there yet, then just give yourself a different reason that resonates with you. Like, I want to show my girls or my kids that it's okay to say no. You don't have to should all over yourself. I should do this for this person and I should do that for that person. And that it's okay to take time for yourself. So if you don't think you're enough of a reason, then maybe your kids are the reason. Just find a different reason.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's really, really, really beautiful. I am guilty of carving out the time and then, filling it in with something else.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a work in progress. I'm getting better at it, and I'm better for it, like you said, and as are the people around me. And I did feel guilty at first. But my son is old enough to understand, like, hey, when you want to go be alone sometimes and just, listen to a podcast, I want to be alone for a few minutes and just sit in dark silence, not have anyone, pulling at me or
Yes.
giving me any sensory input. And I think it's been important for him to see that. Okay. So I have at least one more question for you for this, and I haven't made you cry yet, so I'm working on it. Take your,
I've
I
only
will,
crying before. As I was thinking about these.
Take all the professional hats off, your whole background. This is just wearing your mom hat, answering this question. What is something you've learned on that parenting journey that we have not touched on yet, that you wish you knew sooner, had discovered sooner, and you want other parents to know now?
Gosh. So when I saw this, I was like, oh, shoot, I should have spent more time on this question. But as we spoke, it's a constant thread. And it really is having a community around you. Having your own circle of friends that aren't necessarily tied in with your kids' friends, and that's fine too. That's great. I have my kiddos, like, I'm lucky that my girls have friends that have great parents. Like, I love them. They're great. But also having my own personal circle of friends and my own personal work friends too. And a lot of that time overlaps. But having these circles in their own different ways of my life really, really support me. And when the times that I am struggling in that part of my life, I can lean on them. And so it's, again, going back to the self-care, a lot of times we let our friendships and our relationships fall apart or fall off, or because our kids have sports, or, they're doing this and I'm taking them here and I'm and then, I'm work. But like, we have to invest in that, because that community, those communities, those circles really will be there for you when you're struggling, but also in your joys, like your birthdays and, like special times. Like, those really fill your cup, and they also are great mirrors back to you and the life that you're leading. So yeah, the community support and friends and friendships and the families that we built that are in blood. It's a big necessity in life.
Totally agree. And some of us come by that very easily and very naturally. And others of us, like, it takes a lot of effort and time to really find your people that you can go to in those moments. I know that I had to sort of build a different circle once I became a parent, because all my friends were way ahead of me. And so it just, not that they weren't helpful, but they weren't in the thick of it. And I really wanted people that were. And with my kind of kid, which I at the time defined as a high need kid. Now I know a little bit more about why. So yeah, don't be discouraged if you don't just have that naturally. It can be done, it can be found, and it might not happen easily or right away, but you'll get there. So awesome. I could talk to you forever. I'm sure I'll have you back on. I think we need a play date, or maybe I'll come to your spin class. I want to see this, like, emotional catharsis you go through.
It's magical. It has to be a dark room. It has to be dark.
Well, yeah, because you don't want people to see you like that. Yeah, for sure. It sounds like you're doing a cortisol dump and an endorphin boost, and I can see how awesome that would be. Thank you so much, Corina, for joining me. Listeners, thank you for listening. I hope you got a takeaway from today. I've never assigned homework on this podcast, but I feel like maybe that should be the last thing. If you've lost touch with a friend, maybe reach out to them today and see if you can reconnect. Maybe it's just a text, hopefully a phone call, set up a date to catch up. You're right. We tend to let those things go, and we do need them for ourselves. And there will be a day where you aren't dragging your kids around to play dates and you will want to have your own. So
Yes.
definitely cultivate those friendships. I will be back soon with more stuff that I and others wish that we knew sooner. And in the meantime, I will leave you, as always, with the list of stuff I learned the hardest way, which for now is accept help when it's offered to you, ask for help when it isn't offered and you need it. You are the expert on your child, so trust your gut and your intuition. And if you need to be the squeaky wheel. Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.